Every Catholic on earth needs to hear this story. This miracle of St. Padre Pio is scientifically validated and was so incredible that one of the doctors involved, who was an atheist, ended up converting. And I think in this story, Padre Pio also teaches us what we need to know to be able to do miracles like this in our own lives. So listen to the story about Padre Pio. I get goosebumps every time I hear this. Giovanni Savino, a construction worker and a member of the Third Order of St. Francis, was a devoted spiritual son of Padre Pio. In February 1949, the 35-year-old construction worker was working on the construction of an addition to the friary where St. Padre Pio lived. The workers were leveling the ground and were getting ready to blast a huge boulder that was impeding the construction. It was Savino's custom to attend Padre Pio's Mass each morning, then proceed to the sacristy to receive his blessing. On February 12, 1949, Giovanni was startled when, without any explanation, Pio, having blessed him, embraced him and said, "Courage, Giovanni, I am praying to the Lord that you might not be killed." "Padre Pio, what's going to happen to me?" Savino asked. The priest was silent. The next day, Padre Pio said the same thing, without any further comment, as he did also on the 3rd. When he repeated his disturbing remarks for the 4th time on February 15th, Savino muttered to one of the friars, "I'm afraid something wrong is going to happen today," and told the other members of his crew, "Let's not work today," telling the other men about Padre Pio's remarks. The crew decided to proceed, undeterred, in blasting away from the garden in preparation for the friary addition. At 2 p.m., Savino and another worker placed a charge of dynamite under a boulder. Savino set the charge and lit the fuse. It failed to detonate. After a few minutes, he went over to check the charge. Just as he bent over, the dynamite blew up in his face. Dr. Sanguinetti, along with Padre Raphael and Father Dominic, were at the side of the injured man within minutes. They carried Savino to Sanguinetti's car, in which the physician drove him to the Ospedale Rotundi Hospital of Foggia, where he was admitted for surgery. Numerous foreign bodies were removed from the cornea of the left eye. The right eye, however, was found to be completely destroyed. Moreover, his face had been severely damaged by the blast. Okay, so what's going on so far? Padre Pio blesses this man every morning, and one day after his blessing, he says, "I prayed for you that you might not be killed." And this man, Savino, is quite disturbed. He doesn't know what that means. He keeps working. He tells the crew about this, says, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't work today." They decide to work anyway. And then the dynamite that they're setting to blow up this boulder that's in the way, it doesn't go off. So Savino goes up and he's literally bending over this dynamite that hasn't gone off. Boom, in his face. It damages his entire face. His left eye is quite damaged, and his right eye is basically blown to shreds. But this is where things start to get really miraculous. Sanguinetti drove back to San Giovanni, where he told Rosa, who was then heavily pregnant, "Your husband's eyes are both destroyed," and warned her not to try to visit him. He then went to Padre Pio, who asked how Giovanni was. "He's been blinded, he's lost his eyesight." "Don't you know that isn't certain yet?" replied Padre Pio. "Well, if you say that, and you and Our Lady of Grace assist him, anything is possible. But as of now, Giovanni has lost his sight." "It is not certain yet," Pio replied. It was 3 days before Savino regained consciousness with his entire head and face bandaged. He was told that it might be possible to save the left eye, but the right eye was, quote, completely gone. In the meantime, Padre Pio was asking everyone he knew to pray for Giovanni for 3 days. He exposed the Blessed Sacrament in behalf of the blinded man. He was heard to pray, "Lord, I offer you one of my eyes for Giovanni because he's the father of a family." At 12:30 or 1 in the morning of February 25th, Giovanni Savino was awake, praying the rosary, when he smelled the, quote, aroma of paradise. To the heavy smoker, it smelled like tobacco. He felt 3 slaps on his forehead and understood that it was Padre Pio near him. He actually felt the tightness of the bedclothes caused by someone standing against the bed. "Give me my sight, Padre Pio, or let me die," he said. "I cannot live like this." Later that morning, the ophthalmologist came to examine Giovanni Savino's left eye. When the doctor took the bandages off, Giovanni immediately said, "I can see you." "Turn, so you can see me with your left eye," said the doctor. "No, I see you with my right eye. I don't see anything out of my left eye." The doctor insisted that he was seeing out of the left eye, as the right eye was totally destroyed. After further examination, it was clear that Savino spoke the truth. He was blind in the eye from which the shrapnel had been removed, but he was seeing perfectly from the eye that had been completely shattered to a bloody jelly. Completely astounded, the ophthalmologist, who up to that time had been an atheist, exclaimed, "Now I too believe, because this has happened right before me." So are you hearing this? We're going to go in and I'm going to show you exactly some of the medical documentation that proves that this is a miracle. What happened is Giovanni is bending over this dynamite, blows up in his face. His left eye is badly damaged. His right eye is completely ripped out. It's destroyed. There is not the organ of an eye in his head anymore. Padre Pio visits him and says that he's going to basically obtain for him his sight. They take off the bandages the next morning and he can see. Out of his left eye, which is damaged? No. Out of his right eye, which is completely destroyed. And this doctor who was examining him was an atheist. And this atheist doctor saw this man seeing out of an eye that doesn't exist, saw him seeing out of an eye that had been completely destroyed. There is no natural explanation as to how this man's organ, his eye, was functioning. It was completely shattered. And I'm going to show you that right here in the medical documentation that's coming up next. In the meantime, Giovanni and his wife Rosa were expecting a baby at any time. Rosa asked Padre Pio, who told her that the child would be a boy, if she had permission to name the child after him. "All right, name him Pio," he said. "But we already have a girl named Pia. May we name him Francesco?" "All right, name him Francesco," St. Pio replied. Francesco later grew up to become a Capuchin priest, the same religious order as Saint Padre Pio. Giovanni, who was still being treated for the extensive injuries to his face, was released from the hospital in early June. When he thanked Pio, he was told, "If you only knew what this cost me." So, what exactly did it cost him? A clue may come from the recollections of Pietro Cungino, himself blind, who recalled that one day in the garden while talking to his confreres, Padre Pio suddenly exclaimed, "I am blind, I can't see a thing." After 20 minutes, his eyesight returned. Cungino was unsure about the exact date of this occurrence, but some believe it certainly could have been that this brief and inexplicable episode of blindness came about as a result of the offering Padre Pio had made on behalf of Giovanni Savino. Either way, in this case, Saint Padre Pio did not deny his intercession on the behalf of Francesco, as he did with other supposed cures and supernatural things that surrounded him. As time went on, Giovanni was sent to an eye specialist in Rome for treatments to the left eye, in spite of St. Padre Pio's prediction that these visits would do no good. "No," Padre Pio said, "we have already obtained the grace which we asked for. Even if you go to Rome, you will not get any better than you are right now." And in fact, he remained always blind in the left eye. But until the day of his death at 60, in the spring of 1974, he could see perfectly out of his right eye. His wife recalled, to look at his eye, it was always a mess, yet he could see perfectly out of it. Now, if you want to read more and see the exact medical documentation, I'll put a link in the description where you can go a little further. But to summarize what the medical experts found is this. The official medical record said that his left eye had many foreign bodies in it, and his right eye had been completely, quote unquote, blown out. The medical term they use for this is imoptalmo, which literally means completely torn out. So this man, Giovanni Savino, lived another 22 years being able to see out of an eye that didn't exist, an eye that had been completely destroyed. So in my opinion, every single Catholic on the planet needs to hear about this miracle. This was so persuasive that the eye doctor that looked at his eye converted on the spot because there was no natural explanation as to how this man could see. But now I want to look at something that's probably even more important than this miracle individually and look at how is Padre Pio teaching us to access these miracles, to have this kind of grace in our own lives. And in the story, there's two things that I want to highlight. One is the absolute faith Padre Pio had. They come to Padre Pio, they say he's blinded, he's lost his sight. Padre Pio says, "We don't know that yet." They say, "No, well, he's in bad shape. He can't see, he's blind." Padre Pio says, "It's not certain yet." He has faith that God is able to heal any affliction, to bring good out of any situation. If we want to see miracles in our own lives, we must have the same disposition. It is impossible to please God unless you believe that He is and is a rewarder of those who seek Him. If we seek Him with an undivided heart, we seek Him in sincerity, that's the first step for us being able to access these incredible graces in our own life. And the second thing, which is the perfection of faith, the completing of faith, is our works, our sacrifices. What does Padre Pio do? He does a 3-day prayer session specifically for Savino and for his family and for his eyesight. And then he goes one step further and he says to the Lord, Lord, if this regains him his sight, take one of my eyes. Take one of my eyes, Lord, and give it to him. The power of our prayer is in large part determined by the amount of sacrifice that we are willing to make to the Lord. Why is the prayer of Jesus Christ the most efficacious? Because He sacrifices everything, His body, blood, soul, and divinity for us so that we might be reconciled. Why is the prayer of the Virgin Mary so powerful? Because she's willing to sacrifice her Son in a very real way, offer Him to the Father. And so because she's offering to the Father a sort of infinite sacrifice, her prayers take on a sort of infinite merit. And the same goes for you and for me. The more that we sacrifice to the Lord through prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, the more powerful our prayers become. Our works justify us insofar as they make us more righteous before God. And St. James says the prayer of a righteous man avails much. So if you want to start seeing God acting in your life tangibly, palpably, in a way that's undeniable, you must first have an unshakable faith, a faith that moves mountains, a conviction that God Himself will vindicate those who trust in Him. Then you must put your money where your mouth is, and you must start to pray constantly, to make sacrifices, and to fast in the holy name of Jesus. If you enjoyed that and you want to see a video why demons fear Catholics more than anybody else, then click on this video next. God bless.